Hello, this is not a wrap-up, don't be fooled. I am not a wizard, I cannot read this many books in a month. I wish I could, I wish this was a wrap-up. Alas, it is not. So it is December. I don't know if you can feel it in the air, if you can feel the seismic shift, a disturbance in the force. Can you smell the panic of people trying to meet their Goodreads goal? Because I'm panicking. Something that, yes, is very arbitrary. Who cares how many books you read in a year? I do. I care how many books I read in a year. Do you know how many years in a row I have optimistically set my goal in January to 100, thinking that, like, I can do that, that's about 2 books a week. I've never been able to do it. The closest I've got is literally 70. There was 2 years in a row, I think it was like 2016 and 2017, where I read 70 books in a year. And every year since then, I have just been being lower and lower and lower, because the year after that was like 60, then it was like 53, then it was like 52. How do you people do it? How are people reading over 100 books a year? I want to know. So anyway, this video is for people like me, because I'm going to be recommending a bunch of short books that you can binge at this time of the year to feel better about your Goodreads goal and like bump up the number a little bit. So my first recommendation for this is Agatha Christie. They're not the skinniest of books by any means, and there are some that are quite chunky. But I can always usually read an Agatha Christie in about one sitting. It's just the style of her writing, it's the envelopment of the mystery, it's just a compelling, page-turning book. You will want to finish this as soon as you start it, and therefore they are quite good ones to read at this time of year, because I can often get them done in an afternoon or so. Although for a completely stupid and arbitrary reason I will not be able to read any Agatha Christie this year, because I started collecting Agatha Christie when they were in these beautiful tiny editions. They're small. This is not the regular paperback size, this is slightly smaller. And then they did what they always do, don't they, in publishing, where they reprinted them for no apparent reason in normal paperback size. So the current published versions of Agatha Christie stories I don't want to buy because they don't match all the ones that I currently have. So no Agatha Christie for me this year, but if you don't have that problem, go ahead and read some Agatha Christie to bump up your Goodreads goal. Another good shout is the Penguin Little Black Classics, which I've done this many a time, and I'm not proud of it, or like it's December 31st or something stupid and I'm like panicking because I've got 3 books left to read for my Goodreads goal, which is never even the goal that I want anyway. It's always been lowered from 100 to something, and then I'm always stressed about meeting it. So then I just log a bunch of these and feel like happy that I've met the goal, but also a bit gross and like a fraud, you know? So if you want to feel a bit gross but still meet the goal, Penguin Black Classics are your friends. And also these, are these Penguin? Yeah, these Penguin mint ones. So there's like a bunch to choose from. I don't have all of them, this is just the selection that I have. And there's bound to be something for everyone. There's like non-fiction, poetry, fiction. There's a bunch, so you're bound to find one that you like. Another good shout is poetry, because obviously poetry takes up less space on the page, so it's a lot less time consuming to read a poetry collection than it is to read a book. Although with poetry it depends, obviously, because if the poems are quite dense and you want to make lots of notes, things like that, that can always slow you down, so obviously it depends on the collection. But the poetry collections I have found myself kind of speeding through and reading in one sitting are the Chris Riddle ones, which are poems to fall in love with, poems to save the world with, and poems to live your life by, and these are really gorgeous illustrated editions, and the illustrations also help with the sort of quickness of the reads, I guess, because a lot of the space in the book is taken up with like really beautiful illustrations. And I'm not saying that there aren't like dense or thought-provoking poems in these collections. There definitely are, and there are ones that are heavier and emotional. I'm not saying that it's like a light breezy read, but because of the beautiful drawings it's just a very cozy, comforting reading experience, and I did find myself, you know, going through them quite quickly because I wanted to look at the pictures and read the poems, and they're just quite enveloping and engrossing. So I would recommend these again if you're wanting to bump up your Goodreads goal and find some new poets. The next 2 shorter books I have on here are Before the Coffee Gets Cold and Before the Coffee Gets Cold, Tales from the Cafe. And I think I read these one after the other, and they're both set around this sort of time traveling cafe in Tokyo where you can go and sit in a specific seat, order a coffee, and you can travel back in time. But one of the rules is that you have to return before your coffee gets cold, so it's only like a brief glimpse into the past, and there's all sorts of like rules and regulations around like who you can see, where you can go, things like that. And these are quite whimsical and fun. I've seen a lot of people like actually think that these are quite sad and heartbreaking, but I didn't quite get that, because I think they were sort of so sentimental in some ways that I felt like a little bit distanced from it, if that makes sense. Yeah, they're kind of sad in the way that, like, I was going to say in the way that Pixar can be sad, but that's not quite fair, because Pixar has made me cry on several occasions. But it's sort of sad in the way that, like, you can feel them trying to pull at your heartstrings, and you're like, oh, okay. I don't know if I'm being mean now, but to me these were like quick, whimsical, fun reads, but I know to some people they were like quite heartbreaking and sad reads. So it just depends what side of the fence that you fall on, but if you're a little bit more, I don't know what the word is, cynical? Oh, I don't want to be cynical, but if you don't think that these will emotionally destroy you, they probably will help with your Goodreads goal, because you can get through them quite quickly, or at least I did. Anyway, maybe I'm just a heartless lump of coal. Could be true. So the next couple of books I'm going to talk about are definitely short, but I don't know if I would read them towards the end of the year, as in to help with getting to a goal, because they're short story anthologies, and usually with short story anthologies I always think that I'm going to read them quicker, because one, there's just less book, they tend to be shorter, and obviously because the stories are quite short and snappy, you can usually get a bit of momentum going and maybe finish them, you know, within a day or two. But sometimes if it's a collection where the language is very rich and each story is quite different, it can maybe take a little bit of adjustment when you begin each story to be like, okay, what's happening, where are we, and maybe that can slow you down a bit. That's what I definitely found with Her Body and Other Parties, which took me like 2 months to read, even though it's quite short, because each story is like a different structure. Lyrically, it takes a different shape sort of each time, and the themes are quite heavy and they vary from story to story, and I spent quite a long time digesting each story and trying to think of like, okay, what was that trying to tell me, and you know, what themes are sort of common across each one, all of that stuff. But I know there are some people that do just breeze through short story anthologies, so I'm going to recommend some that I've enjoyed, but with the caveat that I don't actually know if these are breezy for this time of year. Like, I don't know if you'll actually read these quickly. But recent ones that I've enjoyed are Her Body and Other Parties, which, like I said, took me 2 months to read, so maybe not that one for this time of year. But Things We Say in the Dark by Kirsty Logan, which I love, which is a very gothic, atmospheric collection about bodies and femininity and motherhood and duty, but it's also like quite creepy and enveloping. I really enjoyed this one. And the last one is The Beginning of the World in the Middle of the Night by Bookshops' own Jen Campbell, and I really enjoyed this one. It takes a lot from classic fairy tales and folk tales and sort of reimagines them in different ways, as short story collections do. And the next little pile of books are ones that are currently on my TBR, so I don't actually know if these are ones that are breezy in terms of the content of them, but they are short, so I'm going to try and read them in the next month or so, and bump up my Goodreads goal. So the first one is What White People Can Do Next, which is an essay by Emma DeBerry, so obviously this is quite small and very thin, and I think the font is quite big, and this essay details basically what it says on the title, like what white people can do next after the sort of racial awakening that we had last summer with the BLM protests and everything that's happened since. So obviously it's not the lightest of subjects, but because of the format I think it's quite a conversational essay, and obviously like informative, so I will be willing to take notes, but I think it will be one that I can digest quite quickly. The next one in my pile is Misfits by Michaela, a personal manifesto. Again, this is like an essay. I think it's a speech that she gave that has been sort of written down and amended, which I really wanted to read because Michaela is a very, you know, influential figure in like TV. I haven't watched I May Destroy yet, but I really want to. But I think this essay is just about sort of perseverance in the creative industries and like a sort of pursuit of creativity and how she stays motivated and things like that, so that's something that I struggle with. So I very much wanted to read this and sort of learn from the best. The next one in the pile is Poison for Breakfast by Lemony Snicket, which was my birthday gift from the wonderful Rowan. I'm very excited to get to this. It's a little like skinny book, and I think it is set, if not in the series of unfortunate events world, it is about Lemony Snicket, so it's a little bit of a strange one. I don't want to know too much, I'm just going to dive in, but from memory Lemony Snicket has a very digestible, very engaging, very fun writing style. So I think this is one that I can curl up with and finish in an afternoon. The next one I have is Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss, which was a birthday gift from Leanne at Leanne Rose. And this is the one that I'm not actually sure if I'll be able to rush through, because from what I've heard, you know, Sarah Moss is quite a literary figure and a lot of her books are, you know, very critically acclaimed. So I'm thinking that maybe the language is a little bit denser, maybe a little bit elevated, and it might not be one that I want to breeze through. Maybe I want to take my time with it. But it is very skinny, so I'm thinking if it really grabs me, I can potentially finish that in a couple of hours. The next one I have is The Reader's Room by Antoine Lorraine, and it's this sort of like a cozy crime set at a publishing house, which just ticks all the boxes for me. So I think if this is written well and it really sets up the mystery, this is definitely one that will keep me engaged and I can finish it in one sitting. The next one I'll be aiming to get to before January is The Penal Pierre by Margaret Atwood, which is Margaret Atwood's retelling of the tale of Odysseus, but from the point of view of Penelope, Odysseus' wife, who waited for him for a long time to return from the Trojan War. So much like everyone else, I've been in a Greek myths high for like the last couple of years. I was very much a Percy Jackson kid, that's probably where it comes from, but even before Percy Jackson, I was very obsessed with like ancient Egypt and like archaeology and all that jazz. So I've really been enjoying like the recent sort of, what's the word, like resurgence in Greek myth retellings. I read the Stephen Fry one, and I really love Pandora's Jar, which I read this year for Briar's book club, and that was, you know, Greek myths but, you know, focusing on the women, and so this carries on that theme of retelling a Greek myth but focusing on the woman at the centre of it, who classically has not been at the centre of it, has been sidelined. So very excited to get to this. The next one I have here is Conversation, Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata, and this is quite a skinny one. How many pages is that? 163 pages, so definitely readable in an afternoon, but again, like I said, I don't know like how heavy the content is. Potentially it's not one to read in an afternoon, but I think maybe, I think I can do that. That one's quite skinny. And the last one is another poetry collection, which is The Royal's Wife by Caroline Duffy, and like I said, sometimes the poetry, it's not doable to like breeze through it because you want to take your time, you want to digest the poems, you want to make notes, you want to like take in the language, but I have read quite a few of these poems before. This is a collection that my mum owned several years ago, and so I obviously just wanted to buy one for myself, and we studied a few in school, so I think this is definitely one that I could read quite quickly because I am already familiar with the content, or most of the content. I'd say like 70% of the content, so I could definitely get through this, I think. So there you have it. Those are some short books that I have read and some that I have not read and I'm wanting to get to this December. So this was like a sort of recommendations / December TBR, because I will be rushedly trying to up my Goodreads goal. Let me know if that's just me. Like, is it just a me pride thing, like that I need to hit the number even though it's not the number that I set at the beginning of the year? So this video could just be for me, basically. I don't know if there's anyone else that is as concerned about hitting a Goodreads goal to the point where they will just read a bunch of short books in like the last week of the year. But definitely let me know. Let me know if this is a struggle that you have. Let me know if there are any short books that you are looking to read in the next couple of weeks, and definitely recommend me them below because I will be needing them. And I will see you very soon with another video soon.